Gary,
Oh yeah.
we're in Cassidy's.
Oh yeah.
Must be a story behind Cassidy's for you, is there?
Listen, when I got my first job, I guess we all have these favorite places where memories are made. And when I got my first job, it was in Camden Street, and this was the spot. This was the spot. We'd like to say that it was only on Fridays at 5:30, but it seemed to be like clockwork, and some great memories there. My goodness, some incredible memories. Cassidy's of Camden Street, the back, the snug, the front snug, the back little covings, fantastic. I'm just looking at it there, and I think I sat between 1987 and probably 2000, 1993. I sat in every chair, in every location.
It's a very long, narrow bar, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like the old style. They just squeezed it in, but it went, as you say, it went very long. And this area here that we're in, we used to love it because there was no television, would you believe? The front area had TVs. We used to like the back area for two reasons. A, you could see people coming. So
No, and hide or not hide.
and you can move your head. But secondly, there was no TV, so it was an option of the two. And as I say, it was right opposite where we started our careers in a place called BA Systems.
Oh, right.
It's currently Concern, I think, Concern. But my goodness, we used to.
There's good vibe, good drinks, good Guinness.
The whole thing,
Good people, yeah.
I guess the long haul vibes, if that makes sense, and you'd even have all the lads from Fleet Street, the old journalists would come in here and they'd sit around that bar just there, and you'd be able to get tomorrow's news today.
Brilliant.
From the boys. So yeah, great memories. I'm sure I've been in more glamorous hotel pubs and salubrious, but great memories. And like a lot of places, Greg, you know this, you could have been anywhere. The company was great.
Yeah. So if someone else is to walk in to the bar, living or dead, to join us for a couple of drinks, who would it be?
Do you know, I never knew my grandparents really at all, my granddads. And they lived through an incredible time, right? They probably both were born around 1900, and they passed. Yeah, so think about their life as one was an orphan, and you had one option when you were an orphan. Or two options. You became a cartographer, or you became a shoemaker, and he became a shoemaker, right? So he was born in 1900. The other lad was born around the same time, and they would have gone through that whole sort of strife of civil war, independence, free state. I remember one story. I never got to speak to them, but one story about the inconvenience that was caused with the 1916 rising for those people who wanted to do a bit of work. Because it happened all the time. I remember, and he was trying to get from Rathmines over to Belvedere Square, which is where he was making shoes. And they actually stopped. They used to stop and look at the lads in the GPO. What's going on here? And the inconvenience of this whole thing. So I think I would love to sit down with them now that I'm sort of grown up and I've been interested in history. Say, what was it like to be a young fella in 1900, and they just, when 1915, 16, when joining the British Army was a job option, it doesn't even come into our consciousness. So, you know what, Greg, I think either one, both army grandmothers around that time and what life was like, compare it to today, and then have a sense of what's first world issues and what are real issues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. So, Gary, this is the 100th episode of the Host in Ireland Tune Chat. Yeah. I'm interviewing you rather than you interviewing anyone else from Host in Ireland. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Isn't it funny? Not funny in a strange way, but you were the first guest, and it was an in-person. I'm sure you remember, it was an in-person Barstool Chat, and it was
right before COVID.
it was probably about 4 weeks before COVID hit.
Yep.
So effectively, you and I had a chat, and Shani Mac, we should look back at it, because a lot of the stuff you were trying to achieve, I remember, with your business, was getting more people with flexible time and being able to recruit people internationally that will be telecommuting, and being able to get more productivity from the same numbers of staff, all the stuff that you had no choice about 6 weeks later. But I guess that was the timing, wasn't it? Then I couldn't do the Barstool Chats in person, and we got this virtual setup, and now we've 99 in the bag, and we've been to all 4 continents. We've been to, I don't know, 29 countries and 52 cities, and it's really interesting the way this is from Host in Ireland's point of view, it's one of our most ongoing engaged piece of content, and you might wonder why. I just think myself that it's because we sort of set aside the business bit and we talk to people, and personalization. You and I talk about this all the time. You're great engineers, or you're a great builder, or you're a great digital infrastructure planner, but we'll get to that. What's it about you, and what's going on in your life, and who do you support, and we'll build bonds of trust around that, and then we'll get to the purchase order. And if we have a basic fabric of understanding and trust, and that's the personalization of this whole thing. It's
some achievement, isn't it? 99 episodes, 3 years later.
Yeah.
Is there a big takeaway from doing 99 interviews with the Host in Ireland community?
That's a great question. A really great question. And I think what's consistent is that after you tell people genuinely to be their authentic selves, forget about the work bit, forget about the brand, get some absolutely cracking insights about people, their origins. A lot of people that you see at C-levels were apprentices. You see others that never even were apprentices, or went to college, or went nowhere. And usually what I find, which is the best bit, is through a lot of adversity. Usually people learn more stuff when they've been through sort of a rapid torrent, that they actually come out the other side. And so I think my learnings are that no matter what people are from, what part of the sector they're from, we all blow our nose, and we all sneeze, and we all basically have the same objectives and challenges. And sport, I'll have to finish with this. I'd say out of 50%, whether they're male, female, from wherever, sport and music weaves its way through all these different discussions. It's amazing how many times we end up talking about team sports and learning about team sport and music, and how Spotify and music and memory saved people in COVID. So I think it's you learn about good people, and you're surprised by some people. But I think really that what's great about this, what I found, is it brings out the humanity bit.
Yeah.
Because we spoke earlier, and we've had all sorts on the show. And one thing that comes up very often is professional loneliness and imposter syndrome. And there's no
we all have that. We all have that, Garry.
Absolutely, but it's funny, isn't it? It's funny that no matter where you are, whether you're an apprentice or whether you're actually now made it to top perceived level, professional loneliness is a funny old thing.
Yeah. But then people look on and think that person is so confident, and don't see behind that. So I think for me the chats were good to see people in the data center community opening up, and they like talking about their past and where they come from.
Absolutely. And that is what helps, I think, sometimes. And I'm amazed the amount of people that are from all sectors that listen to the show, and comment on it. And I can tell you this much, on social media, there's an awful lot of voyeurs. There's an awful lot of people who don't.
And talk about social media, right? I have to get this right. Your LinkedIn profile, right, states that you're a stubborn digital optimist, impatient learner, enthusiast, beginner, possibilityist, and common sense practitioner.
Yeah,
what's that all about?
You know, I put it into ChatGPT, and that's what it stuck out now. I just think like you get to a certain age, don't you, when you know what your strengths really are and you know what you're not so good at. And one of the things that you got to be probably is honest to yourself. You can still be whatever you want, but honest to yourself. And I just think that that encapsulates. I'm very impatient at learning. I want to learn. I'm a stubborn digital optimist. Why am I that? Because I love floppy disks. I always did, and I always will. Because it's not the disk that matters. It's the data that was on it. And it's the same now. You're building stuff or designing stuff all over the world. You know, the centers are just not just, but they're the how. The data that's in it is the what and the why, and that's what's changing the world. So I just put. I'm possibilist. I'm constantly amazed by different people, whether they're school kids, whether they're college kids, whether they're older workers, at the possibilities that they can achieve when they're just actually cultivated and put in the right environment. And that often we like to think that there's a master plan, but it's often just through chance. It's often just through chance. And we don't talk enough about luck, do we? I mean, the luck.
But they say you make your own luck.
You do, but I also agree with, was it Jack not Nicholas, the golfer dude, and he said, the more I practice, the more I seem to get lucky.
I tell you, go back to sport. You're a massive Arsenal supporter. So if you were to give them a tagline for 23, similar to your own tagline, what would it be?
Concentrate in the last 10 games.
And you played a bit of football in your early days.
Played anything, everything and anything that had a team sports. I love team sports. You know, I love anything.
Were you good at it?
I was worse than many and better than some. And but I just think that you get to a stage where you know your own level of incompetence. You know, I always wanted to be that centre forward, but we all did. And I ended up being that centre half. That anything above grass was within territory. And I just, but again, when I look back and playing different sports, whether it was rugby, I even played a bit of cricket and all sorts of stuff. It's just a crack. It's just a crack with the lads and the crack in training, and I don't know where the medals are, but I'm sure they're somewhere. But I love that concept that you learn from sport early on, that you want to be the centre forward, but you know what? You get a bit older and you say, I just want a game, so I'll settle with left full. That means I stay on the pitch. And then we, but also I loved, and I talk a bit about it, is you remember the young fella that was 8, 9, 10, 11 that scored 20 goals a match? And then by 14, he didn't seem to be scoring. He either disappeared because it was too talented, or because he didn't play with the team, you didn't pass to him.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you can learn that as well through a bit of business, is that we all come out of college, you know, we're going to read engineer, but really it's about your ability to communicate with other people, what you do and why you do it. And that's a bit like why fellas that are really talented in sport early and young, very few of them are still playing at 20.
Going back to LinkedIn, you have 36,000 followers. I was amazed with that. Do you know them all? You know any of them?
Does when Paul McGrath used to run out in the Aviva to 40,000 people, does he know them all?
So take it, if something happened and you could only keep 3 apps on your phone, one would have to be LinkedIn, I take it.
Do you know what? It depends where I am. If I was in a desert island, I wouldn't care. It would all be about Spotify, and it would be all about Audible, or maybe some other book or something that, you know, that saying, which I love. And I was told it young, you know, you're never alone if you have a good book. You're never on your own. You're never lonely. You know, you get lost in that world. But yeah, maybe it depends, doesn't it? What would happen? What's happening around me? I'm going to get very philosophical. What's happening around me to mean that I've only got 3 apps on my phone? Is Armageddon after hitting? Then I want to know where the food is.
Maybe without all the data centers, we'd be all limited to the amount of data that we can have on our mobile phones.
Yeah, listen, then we'd be using a different form of smoke screen or smoke signals or something, you know.
Pigeons. You're going into your 10th year as founder, commander-in-chief of Hosting Ireland. Tell us a bit about life before Hosting Ireland.
Do you know, I was very lucky to be the world's worst COBOL programmer. And I've said this on this show many times. Being the world's worst COBOL programmer meant that I was hanging out in college with COBOL programmers or engineers. So I knew how they worked and I knew how they operated. And then I came into this very commercial organization, which used to drink in Cassidy's, called BA Systems, where we were selling PCs and software and all the rest. But you know, you find sometimes that the really intense technical people maybe didn't have the skills then of social etiquette or social skills or emotional intelligence to sit with a guy who really doesn't know what a PC is, or a person from a hole in the wall, but knows he's a problem. And you know the engineers on the other side have the solution, but you put the two together and they're like Germans and French trying to communicate in their native languages. So I just found that groove, man. I just found that exact groove that I spent a lot of time with engineers in college. I was brutal, absolutely categorically brutal. I couldn't keep attention span for 5 minutes. So you imagine, but I understood sort of what they were all about. So that just worked, and that worked. And then we surrounded ourselves with a few really good people, and we got involved in that whole voice and data thing. And that was moving away from mainframes, getting involved in personal computers, connecting them all up, getting rid of the sort of the whole idea that you had to have a white coat and the Harvard degree to use a computer. That was brilliant. That was the Wild West, really like the Wild West. And that's really what shaped me and history.
And then back to today and back to Hosting Ireland 9+ years later. Is there a big achievement or the biggest achievement you've?
I think coming together is a start and everything, but achieving things together is actually the fun. And is it the best achievement? One of them. Yeah, one of them. I'd have to say staying 32 years married is my own biggest personal achievement, you know? And maybe that's more testimony to Denise than myself. But I think certainly what the joy of what Hosting Ireland is about is actually now coming back with people who maybe were starting or middle of their career 10 years ago. And I'm coming back and saying, you know, it was great that forum you set up 8 years ago that allowed people to come in and chat, talk, be themselves and whatever. So we're starting to get into that cyclical thing. So yeah, it's fun. You know, sometimes you wonder whether this is work or not. But I think as we become more digitalized, and this is an oxymoron, as we build more digital services, as we wear more headsets, as we become more comfortable on Zoom and Teams, the more necessary it is for us to all work harder to be present when we're together one-on-one, together, social gatherings or business gatherings and stuff. Enjoy that, because I get a dynamic and an energy off people, the proximity to people that I just don't get digitally. Call me old-fashioned, but I think that's one of the parts that I enjoy the most when we have gatherings or we have people coming from all over the world, Irish Americans, Irish Italians, wherever, and they come to one of our gatherings. So I think that's it. Yeah, I think it's one of the best achievements, but we're not finished yet. You know, we're only starting. I've only 50 years yet, but I'm planning.
What keeps Garry Connolly interested outside of work and Hosting Ireland?
Keep looking for problems. I think that's it. I keep looking for problems that maybe could be solved or help to be solved. I'm at an age now where some of the people who I was in college with, would you believe, are retiring. They retire at mid-50s. And I'm thinking to myself, you know, I've made so many mistakes in my career, good decisions, bad decisions. I'm now going to call that experience and I'm going to use it. So if we can use, I guess that's the thing, isn't it? If we can sort of constantly ask questions, a bit of a devil for saying why and why not and what's that mean, and sometimes it just drives people around you crazy. And other times you actually get upon something that says, yeah, maybe it's just that somebody, to your often point, you're a great man for saying this. Very rarely do you invent something straight that's new. Usually it's actually taking a piece of that and taking a piece of that. And when you actually bind that together with timing and a bit of luck, then you have this magic, you know. So I think that's me, start, middle, and end a bit. And
the final one on the beginning, the young Garry Connolly. Did you have a nickname back in the day, either in school or part of your football team? Or...
We all have them when we play football. So it would have been among the football gang before Gaza. It was Gaza. But yeah, and
it's was it before Gaza?
Before, oh yeah, Jesus. Yeah, before Gaza it was Gaza, and then the other one, which in school was Jaws, because I have a particularly long jawline, and you might remember you're of the same age category. The Jaws from the James Bond movies.
Yeah,
and he got these big teeth,
silver teeth,
and he got a big strong jaw. So there you go. Yeah,
Garry, wrapping up, right? A couple of quick fire questions that you fired our other guest. What have you learned in the last 24 hours?
I've learned that honeybees are not part of the solution to the declining bee populations in the world. It's the wild bees that 30% face extinction. So if you think about it, getting a load of honeybees, 50,000 of them, to feast on the same amount of food is like trying to save the wolves in Antarctica by getting a Labrador. They're pets. That's what I've learned actually in the last.
So by trying to do things right, we were all doing things wrong, were we?
Well, yeah, I guess we can all learn from that. Just follow the science. I think that we could all learn from actually being a fact-based, science-based. Use that as our
database.
Yeah.
And what's the kindest thing anyone has done for you?
Do you know what? That's a great question as well. Probably the first year of my career, I was lucky enough to work in a company that celebrated and sent people off to great places when they showed application and commitment. So they sent me off to Vegas anyway to this thing called Comdex. First year there, 12 months, 18 months. And what did I do, as you do when you're whatever age, 20? I fell asleep on the phone talking to my girlfriend, Denise, at the time. So as you can imagine, calling somebody from Vegas on a hotel bedroom phone, I came home with a bill that was probably 3 times the revenue of what I was generating in the company. And the kindest thing that anybody ever did to me was, on the back of the whole company, well, quite a few wanted to fire me, one guy stepped up, Barry Rhodes. Sandy is actually part of our gang now with Ethos Engineering. And he said, no, let's not panic. Mistake. Let's work off the cost. Work it off over a period of time. Kindest thing anybody did. Because in 1987, there weren't jobs, a lot of. We were exporting people, and more people. So that was the start, middle, and end. Kindest thing anybody ever did.
Wow. Last question, right? Leaving certs are going on at the moment.
Yeah.
If you were to meet an 18-year-old Garry Connolly,
yeah,
any advice you'd give yourself?
Oh, just calm down. Calm down. It's a step, but it's not a defining step. You know, just apply yourself, do your best. Whatever is the outcome is the outcome. But once you have you know, a bit of critical thinking, once you've got sort of some application, actually that's what shines through. Academic results are great and wonderful to get you an interview. But you know yourself, Greg, you've interviewed more people than I have, but usually there's something in a person that is more than just the academic side that makes you want to, oh, I'm doing a bit of, you know, I give of myself with Coda Dojo, or I coach the girls soccer team down the village under 10s. You know, when you hear that type of thing, it's absolute green flags. You know, green flags. You give it yourself, and you're giving a bit back, and you apply yourself, and you're not all about yourself. That's the stuff that actually makes somebody really successful. So, but you know what education does and what school does is it gives you some discipline, doesn't it? It gives you some discipline too, that we can't just all do what we want to do all the time throughout our lives. There's certain stages where you just have to do the hard yards, learn the discipline. But I just think that there's such an intensity around it that it's not the all and be all. That's what I'd say to myself. Whereas back then, I probably thought it was.
And I think most kids do
Yeah,
at that stage. Yeah.
I think they do.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell myself. Yeah.
Garry, absolute pleasure. 100 episode. Well done, you. 3 years later.
Thank you. Thank you for starting it off.
Thank you for the pleasure of asking you the questions and running the table on you.
Well, with that, I'll have to ask you to leave now because you're able to walk away.
Yeah. I'll see you now. Best of luck.